online. You are all very much welcome to yet another episode of our monthly virtual seminar, webinar at the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies of the National Open University of Nigeria. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Olufemi Peters, I welcome you all to today's session, which promises to be very, very exciting because we are looking at yet another interesting topic in migration and global studies. As usual, I'll just say one or two things about our center and go ahead to introduce our presenter for today. Our center, like we've always heard, for those who have not heard about it, was established 3 years ago. Like I said, the last time we've come of age, we are no more that toddler now. We are getting bigger in age every day. So we are 3 years old, and this was established in 2020 at the by the seed fund from Tech Fund, and during the tenure of Professor Oba Adamu, who is the immediate Vice Chancellor of this university. Our vision is to be the bridge between humanity and the future, and we have a mission to provide sustainable leverage for interdisciplinary research in migration and global studies. Of course, our values are numerous, but let us talk about our mandates quickly: to provide leverage for field-based and solution-driven research, to serve as agents of national policy for migration studies, to seek grants for academic activities and outreach for sustainability, to publish and sustain peer-reviewed academic journal and monograph series, to collaborate with stakeholders in the field and policymakers, to organize occasional seminars, conferences, and public lectures. I want to use this opportunity to tell you that our center has an international journal in migration and global studies, a very, very interesting journal to publish in and to read articles from. It's beyond now. We are on our third volume, first issue, which is you are going to be able to access on Friday, this very Friday, which is next tomorrow. You go online, you see our articles there, and then we are now also getting ready for the issue 2. The issue 1 actually is late. We apologize for that, but we are going to make it up with the issue 2, which will not be as late as this. Of course, for very many reasons, people would not make it, but at last, I'm happy to inform you that we have been able to make it, and it will be online from Friday this week. And we want to use this opportunity to also ask you all to submit your articles to us. And the website and our journal link has been posted on the chat, this very chat now, by one of our administrators. So kindly get the details and then look on our website to see what you can advise us to do better and appreciate whatever you think we are doing. We're also on YouTube, and we are also on Facebook, and many other social media links. So please, our Facebook link should also be put there for those who are on Facebook, and of course, YouTube, go there to like whatever you see there under this center. It's a way of making our center more visible, and so kindly key into it and help us to help others. Having said that, I am now going to go straight to introduce the speaker for today so that we don't waste too much time in other things since we have put our links online. So today we have one of our own who is going to present to us, one of our very own will present to us today, and that is Dr. Omotoba Nathaniel Ileri. He is a staff of this university, a lecturer, but he's a young man, but full of ideas And this, because it's well known to me, he works with me too in this center, and he has decided to come up to show others the example, to try to come up and present that you don't really need to have it all, but you just need to have interest, and you can speak anywhere, and you can be part of this. You don't have to be a professor anyway to even be here. So it's a young academic, and he's doing very well. He was previously working, he has worked at 2 places actually. Initially, he worked at Nigeria Immigration Service in 2015, after which he moved to academics in 2016 at Ekiti State University in Ekiti State, 2016 to 2021. And he now moved to the National Open University of Nigeria in 2021, where he has been to date. So he is a lecturer at the Department of Tourism in this great university. And so that is why we have tourism as the key feature of today's presentation. And he's going to talk to us about tourism and sexual trafficking as applies to tourism. We are going to hear from him the very many interesting things we need to hear. And he's a member of many professional bodies. He's a member of Nigerian Institute of Management. He's a member of Institute of Debt Recovery Practitioners of Nigeria. He's a member of Association of Nigerian Geographers, Certified Institute, is a certified member of Institute of Hospitality and Tourism Management, and is also a member of Wildlife Society of Nigeria. And of course, his interests are, not surprisingly, tourism and cultural tourism, and is married with children. So we are going to hand over to Nathaniel Ileri Omotoba to make his presentation. Over to you, sir. You can share your screen.
Thank you very much, my director. Sorry, I have issues with my video, so I might not be putting my video on. I think it's the software. And I am Nathaniel Ileri Omotoba. Good afternoon, my professors and my other erudite scholars. Just as my director has said, I'm Nathaniel Ileri Omotoba of the Department of Tourism Studies, Faculty of Social Sciences of this great university, National Open University of Nigeria. Today, I want to talk on the topic sex tourism and Enigma for irregular migration. Sex tourism and Enigma for irregular migration. Now, these are my outlines. Number one, we'll be looking at the subject of tourism. We want to consider sex tourism. We want to see sex tourism destinations. Now we'll look at the subtopic called irregular migration. We'll consider sex trafficking. We'll look at the causes, the consequences, and recommendations of sex trafficking. Let me start by introducing us to the topic of tourism. According to World Tourism Organization 1995, tourism comprises of activities of persons traveling and staying in places outside their usual habitation for not more than one consecutive year for the purpose of leisure, business, and other purposes. Now, there are several key elements that is being highlighted in this definition. We have the transportation, which is very, very compulsory. There is no way you will embark on any form of tourism activity without transportation elements. Another one is lodging, also known as accommodation. Yes, wherever you go to, you want to sleep. because most time you spend at least one night at the destination. Let's go there for sightseeing, for recreational activities, and most importantly, to learn about culture of the places that you go to. Now, what are we able to get, from this definition? You are supposed to leave your regular setting and go to a new one. And as a tourist, you're supposed to stay for at least one night. And the trip normally don't last more than a year. Whenever it lasts more than a year, it is known as migration. It is known as migration. Now, another thing that is of utmost importance is that tourists move out to learn about other people's cultures. You want to see other people's cultures, what is their way of life, what do they eat, how do they dress. You want to look at their landscapes. Now, there is a purpose for every tourism activity. There's always a purpose for every tourism activity, which might cover reasons such as fun, like I mentioned the other time, work, health, education, etc., etc. By the time we move on, we will know more about reasons why people embark on tourism activity. Now, having said that, what are the forms of tourism? We have two general forms. We have the domestic tourism, which entails movements or embarking on tourism activities within an international border. Why international tourism means embarking on tourism activity outside, traveling out of an international border. Now, those are the two forms. Now, we have other types, which are product-driven. I said product-driven because it solely depends on the product you are meeting at the destination. Before I move to that, let me make us understand that we have the origin, which is where you are. This is where you are traveling from, and we have the destination where you are going to. So for product-driven types, you want to look at the products, what you will meet at the destination. And because of that, we have as many types as possible. I will just mention a few. We have ecotourism, which means travel to area of natural area where we have natural things, pristine areas. We have cultural tourism, traveling to see the ways of life of people. We have sports tourism, that is traveling for sporting related activities. We have wildlife tourism from the word wildlife, very close to ecotourism. You want to see wildlife. For example, you travel to the Yankari Game Reserve. It's part of our wildlife tourism. We have a medical tourism. Medical tourism, travel to see, to patronize medical facilities outside the country. We have religious tourism, very common here in Nigeria, for people that go to for pilgrimage. Jerusalem, Mecca. Then we have sex tourism, which is what we will be discussing today. We have what we call dark tourism. Dark tourism. We have agritourism, that is tourism that involves agricultural produce. And lastly, we have witchcraft tourism, a very new type of tourism, situation whereby you travel to see areas that are known for old witchcraft activities. We have several examples on that. Now, coming to the focus of today's discussion, sex tourism. Sex tourism involves traveling with the goal of having a relationship or engaging in sexual activities for payment or support of a lifestyle. The goal the reason why you are traveling is because you want to, engage in sexual activities. It can either be domestic or international. That is, sex tourism can be within an international border. At the same time, people travel out to engage in sex tourism. Now, this practice of sex tourism is predominant in countries where sex work is legal. There are many countries in the world where they attach legality to sex work. In fact, they call them, unlike in our country here, and other countries where it is not legal, where we call them prostitutes. They call them commercial sex workers in countries where it is legal, because just like normal workers, they pay their taxes, they do everything that a normal worker will do. Now, sex tourism is as old as tourism itself. And I can tell you, we can trace tourism to the 18th century. The father of tourism is Thomas Cook, and he started tourism, and since then, tourism has been one of the areas that most countries, they look into, especially for their external earnings. Now, sex tourism is as old as tourism, and the global sex tourism market through size remains a mystery. The reason is everybody always shy away from, discussion of their sexual lives. They don't feel very comfortable. It's just like asking somebody, when was the last time you had sex? That person will look up, what type of question is this? Now, the word sex tourism was coined out of legality. From the word sex tourism is a type of tourism, and tourism is a legality. But you realize that the illegality that happens under the term is too much. The illegality that happens under the term sex tourism is just too much. According to Grabon 1983, a sex tourist seeks commercial sexual relationship whilst on holiday. Oppenheimer 1999 argues that you can be a sex tourist even if that is not the primary reason for travel. That is to say, you might travel for any other reason, but at the same time, you might still engage in sex tourism. Now, for many, according to all 1996, sex tourism involves connotation of commodification and prostitution. But realize that sex tourism is far more than just sexual activity. It is not just about, okay, look for one person, tell the person, I'm so person. At the end of the day, you do what you want to do, and it is much more than that. And that is why if you look at this diagram, sex tourism, in some instances, it can be voluntary. In another way, they exploit people to engage in sex tourism. And just like I said the other time, in some countries, it is commercial, and in some other countries, it's non-commercial. Some people still engage in sex tourism, even where sex tourism is not legal. Now, what are the types? What are the types of sex tourism? We have prostitution. We have prostitution, which is the exchange of sexual services for money. Prostitution is the exchange of sexual services for money. And examples of a sex tourism destination under this category are Amsterdam and Thailand. Another type is the sex show, which are live performances. Sex shows are live performances in which one or more performers, engage in sexual behaviors. This is very common in our clubs. Okay, you see ladies, they start doing one thing or the other sexual behavior, for the purpose of pleasure and gratification of the audience. We also have maid brides. Maid brides. For maid brides, a male order bride is a woman who is ordered into marriage by a male It's just like you want to order your, what is it called now? You want to order something from Jumia. For male brides, that is the way it is. They order women, especially ones with better financial means. And we also have sex slavery. And this is when a person is compelled to engage in explicit sexual acts. This time around, the person is forced to engage in explicit sexual acts. We have child sex tourism, which is the sexual exploitation of children by a person, who travel from their hometown or region in order to have sexual contact with children. You realize that what I said the other time, that fine sex tourism is illegal thing, but there are many illegality that happens under that name, sex tourism. We have as many destinations as possible for sex tourism. We have as many destinations as possible. We have Thailand. We have Thailand. For Thailand, in fact, sex tourism is one of their major ways of getting external earnings. For example, sex tourism is estimated to be worth about 6.4 billion US dollars a year in revenue, and it accounts for a significant portion of their national GDP. Also, we have the Gambia. We have the Gambia. For Gambia, they mostly attract female sex tourists. That is, it is their men that are really into that business in Gambia. We have the Dominican Republic that can be found in the Caribbean. We have Amsterdam. Amsterdam is another example. We have Spain, and we have Brazil, among others. Now, looking at this map, this is a world map of sex tourism destinations. And where you have green, you have where prostitution is legal and regulated. For example, in Thailand, prostitution is legal and regulated. And where we have the blue color, prostitution is legal, but not as organized as the ones with green color. And for the ones with orange color, prostitution is illegal. It is illegal to buy sex, so to say, but it is legal to sell sex. And for areas where you have red, like our country, Nigeria, prostitution is highly illegal. Now, having said that about sex tourism, let me say these few things about irregular migration. Irregular migration means entering or residing in a country without the right paperwork. That is according to International Organization for Migration, 2021. The migrant may have entered the country illegally. He or she may be illegally residing in the country. At the same time, he or she may be illegally working in the country. All these things still constitute what we refer to as irregular migration. And here I have a map of a global study on smuggling of migrants. This is for 2018. And we have two major areas there. We have the main origin areas, and we have the main destination areas. The one in purple are the main destination areas, and the one in blue are the main origin areas. And our country, Nigeria, falls in the main origin area. It falls in the main origin area. Now, sex trafficking, which is a manifestation of irregular migration, involves illegally transporting people from one area to another, for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Like we have on the diagram here, we have these ones, they are trying to, transport them for the purpose of sexual exploitation. And sexual trafficking, is a type of human trafficking and a form of modern day slavery. Now, sex tourism. This is one of the illegality that is present in sex tourism. Sex tourism has led to increase in sex trafficking. And right now, the sex industry ranks third. It ranks third in the world after other illegal businesses. Illegal businesses like drugs and arms trafficking. Now, what are the structural factors? What are the structural factors that enhance the growth of sex tourism? What are these factors? We have the economic policies. We have the globalization of the sex industry. We have male demand. We have female supply based on women's inequality. We have racial myths and stereotypes, and we have military presence. Let me just briefly explain these cogent points. For economic policies, in most countries, especially developing countries of the world, we have economic policies that are not favorable. And this was brought about by ILOs, international lending organizations, such as World Bank and IMF. Why they borrow developing countries money? These countries, why they are trying to pay back the money, it brings a kind of economic hardship. And because of this, it enhances the growth of sex trafficking. Another point is globalization of the sex industry. As the economy is growing globally, sex industry to follow suit. Due to the advent of technology and every other things, we realize that there are many areas of sex industry that is even yet, to be looked into. Male demand. Generally, the belief is that male are the ones demanding for sex. They are the major customer in the sex industry. And because of this, they are the most invisible factor, in promoting prostitution and trafficking of women for prostitution worldwide. Then for female supply based on women inequality, generally, the belief is, well, it is female that should be subjected to this type of thing because they are not equal to men. Yes, culturally in Nigeria, that is the general belief. But because of this, female too have been subjected to sex trafficking, racial myths and stereotypes. Generally, it is believed that there are some tribes, there are some races that, are in conformity with prostitution. They believe that their ladies are just there, yes, they love sex a lot, and because of that, they can be used, especially when it comes to sex trafficking. And lastly, military presence. War, armed conflict, civil strife, generate trafficking in many parts of the world. And because of this, most of these sex industries are being located very close to military bases. This is a map showing human trafficking. We have from the country of origin, we have the moderate number of people. We have the high number of people, and we have very high number of people. That is to say, many people are being trafficked from these areas where we have very high number of people, which Nigeria is one of them. And for countries of destination where sex tourism is more profound, We have some high number of people and very high number of people. Now, what are the elements of trafficking? There are three elements: acts, means, and purpose. The act involves recruitment, transportation, transfer, harbor, and the receiver. And the means, sometimes they use force, coercion, fraud, deception, abuse of a position of vulnerability. Sometimes they give payment, and sometimes, especially in this period where kidnapping is so high in this country, abduction is being used. And what is the purpose? They exploit them. They exploit these victims. Now, I want to bring this to our home country. Nigeria has been a source, transit, and destination country for sex trafficking victims, especially women and children. And we realize that females from rural Nigeria are forced into sexual exploitation. While in urban areas, females there might want to do it willingly, but females from rural areas are forced into sexual exploitation. And here in Nigeria, most of the traffickers, they rely on voodoo. You know, voodoo causes to control victims. Although scientifically, we may not really believe that, but the truth is, there are these things here in the country. Now, it is also believed in Nigeria that these victims are commodities. They are commodities that can give them 100 times whatever they spent, you know, in getting them. There has been many cases. For example, a total of 1,076 victims of person trafficking in Nigeria was registered in 2018, according to SASU 2022. Now, this data is from NATIP, and if you look at the cases, these are trafficking cases reported and investigated. The first one there is importation of persons for prostitution, just two. The second one is exportation of persons, that is moving them from this country, Nigeria, to wherever they want to take them to for prostitution. We have 16. Now, procurement of persons for sexual exploitation, which is very, very high. We have 164. Now, recruitment of persons under 18 years for prostitution, 10. Recruitment of persons for pornography or hotel, 6, which account for 0.5%. And lastly, on this table, the foreign travel, which promotes prostitution. And that accounts for 20.1%. This is not the full table, but I brought out the one that, you know, is relevant as far as this discourse is concerned. Now, coming to the states in Nigeria, what are the incidences of trafficking in states in Nigeria? The highest here is 175. That's from Benue State. Why we don't have any in Gombe State. Before, the belief is that we have high people engaged in this from Edo State. Well, realize that Benue State has overtaken that, according to NATIP 2021. Now, what is that relationship that now exists between sex tourism and sex trafficking? I want to discuss this in relation to the theory of demand and supply by Adam Smith in 1776. Now, if you look at the diagram, we have sex tourists and we have sex trafficking. For sex tourists, all they do is travel to the destination for sex tourism. And under that, we have our tourism demand, the demand for sex tourism. Now, the other parts, which is sex trafficking, we have tourism supply. And because of tourism supply, you know, for the purpose of sex tourism, there has been as many irregular migration as possible. Now, for supply, those who are bought and sold for sex, they constitute supply, while the individuals with the desire, you know, along with the ability and willingness to purchase people within that marketplace to use for sex, they are those that are within this, the demand range. And because of this, there has been many irregular migration. To explain the diagram above, I'll be able to come up with these 8 points. Sex tourism is a product of goods supply and demand. That is, demand, it is what you demand for that the producer supply. And to keep that industry moving, it is very important that there must be regular supply. Who are these people that are in the supply chain? The ones, the people that are being trafficked. Now we have the second point, sex tourist demand for sex tourism. And at the same time, you may not be there, you know, for the purpose of sex tourism. And at the same time, you might still partake or participate in sex tourism. Number 3, for regular supply of sex tourism products, there is need for sex trafficking. And sex trafficking remains a manifestation of irregular migration. Also, tourism supply depends upon provision of variety of tourism products in a particular market. It is directly related to tourism demand. And like I mentioned earlier on, tourism supply is generally continuous. There must be continuity in the supply so that the market can continue to boom. And tourism demand depends upon supply of tourism products. Now, what are the causes of sex trafficking? The first one is bad economic condition. For example, in Nigeria, most people are traveling today. They are always looking for opportunity, you know, to travel because of the current economic situation in Nigeria. And because of this, most are falling victims. 4 victims of being victims of sex trafficking. Another one is poverty. The poor always see, you know, outside there as places where they can make ends meet. And at the end of the day, they fall victim of sex trafficking. Unemployment, broken homes, peer pressure, inequality, the weak legal framework, especially in a country like Nigeria. We have porous borders, economic boom in destination. Most of the countries where these people go to, where they traffic the victims to, are economically stable. Insecurity is another one. Restrictive immigration policies, which is affecting all, especially those that want to travel. When you travel, they will tell you that these are the things you have to get. If you don't get this, you cannot move to any country of your choice. And because of that, people are always looking for opportunity. Either it is legit or it is not legit to move out of the country. Illiteracy is another thing. Most of the victims are illiterate. Corruption on the part of our government, corruption on the part of even everybody, because corruption starts from individuals even before it gets to government. Greed on the part of the victims, high demand for female prostitution, especially at the destination. And lastly, the profit accrued to this thing is very high. It is very high. So many people are really involved in sex trafficking, and they traffic these victims to countries where we have sex tourism. Now, what are the consequences of sex trafficking? We have high risk of disease contraction. We have as many sexually transmitted diseases as we have the diagram here. Herpes, HIV, hepatitis, etc., etc. These victims are at high risk of contracting these diseases. unwarranted pregnancies, which most of the time will lead to multiple abortion. Psychological trauma. The trauma these people face. For example, I stumbled on the story where the lady, the name was not mentioned though, it's a research. The lady said it that anything the boss wants, that is what he does. Either their customers want condom or not, and at the end of the day, it affects her psychologically. And it also results in high level of illiteracy. These people that are doing these things, when would they have time? When would they really have time, to go to school? Now, lastly, substance abuse and addiction. Most of these victims are always induced. Okay? And at the end of the time, they become addicted. Can't imagine somebody that has been, trafficked sexually, thinking of attending to 10, 15 men in a day. How can she, achieve that if not for, substance abuse and addiction? Now, conclusively, like I've mentioned the other time, tourism is seen as a drive for economic emancipation in any part of the world. Okay? And just like other types of tourism, like we have ecotourism, cultural tourism, and other types, sex tourism too is seen as revenue drive, especially in countries where commercial sex is legal. And because this is legal, there is a need to continually increase supply base for commercial sex, as a result of high demand for sex tourists. And because of this has increased the cases of irregular migration, especially as a result of what? Sex trafficking in developing countries of the world. And lastly, various causes of this trafficking should be looked into so as to reduce the cases of sex trafficking. Now, by the way of recommendation, the first one is revival of solid cultural and social values. How do we go about this? I remember those days, yes, I'm very young, but at least those days where you see a lady, I think that was around 95, 96, when you see a lady putting on trousers, you say that person is actually. In Yoruba land, I don't know of other culture. In Yoruba land, then, before you be disflowered, you need to get to your husband's house. And I think the mother of the husband will stay. We'll be expecting an handkerchief soaked with the blood. So all those cultures are being eroded. And because of this, many things are now happening in the world, especially in the area of sexual abuse. Interest of women and children, because they are the ones that are majorly affected. They are the ones that are majorly affected by this issue of sex trafficking, which has come to stay because of sex tourism that is very legal in many countries of the world. Poverty is another one. One thing is to be poor. One thing is feminization of poverty. In developed countries of the world, women always have that say. But due to our cultural values, especially in developing countries of the world, they believe that, okay, women should be relegated. They should just be there. And because of that, most of the time, they find it hard, to come up. Education opportunities among its teeny youths is very, very important as well. Our youths should be educated. In Nigeria today, probably due to the economic situation, there are many people that are out of school. And because of that, they are always looking for ways to make ends meet. While our youths, the guys are, involved in Yahoo business, most of the ladies are into prostitution. And we move at every slightest opportunity, to travel out for the same purpose. And lastly, there is a need to amend all the legal and institutional framework aimed at fighting human trafficking. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nathaniel, for that wonderful exposition. I mean, I think I enjoyed every bit of this together, and many things are coming to mind. I can see that, please stop sharing your screen so that we can see our audience better. I can see the hand of our former Vice Chancellor, Professor Uba Adamu's hand is up, and I can also see Mina Williams. But before I hand over to them to make their comments and ask their questions, I also want to put this across to the presenter before I would sex tourism and sex trafficking. Please differentiate. I want to know whether there's any difference between sex tourism and sex trafficking. And if you say it is the same, then I would say, in my mind, I would have been more comfortable just talking about sex trafficking and maybe not necessarily putting it as a tourism. Maybe I'm being sentimental here, but I want you to tell us whether there's a difference, between those two. And then I just want to quickly, and on a lighter move, you said in those days, maybe it's from the Yoruba side, I think Nigeria generally. But luckily, these pictures you showed us in this presentation today, I did not really see any lady wearing trousers, yet they were not well dressed. They were exposing their thighs. So it follows that not necessarily about trousers, but about any dress you wear, you can wear it rightly or wear it wrongly. And perhaps that is why it's no more popular as it was in those days. When people say you wear trousers, you are in quote, inverted commas. But we have seen that you may wear trousers and look very decent, and you can wear a gown or a skirt and look very horrible. So that's just my own personal view. And witchcraft tourism, even though it's not your focus, I would have wanted you to tell us what exactly it means. Witchcraft tourism, you mentioned it in the course of your talk. I know yours is sex tourism is your focus, but since you mentioned it, just to enlighten some of us, I wanted to know more about witchcraft tourism. Those are just my own comments and observations. While I now go ahead to call Professor Uba Adamu to make his points. Thank you, sir.
Please, good afternoon, Director. Yeah, good afternoon, Director, and everyone else. And shout out to my main man, Professor Fogolo, the old man. So always happy to see him. Hello, how are you? How is Sweden? I hope you are not facing problem with all that Quranic burning and all that.
Actually, I'm in the UK on holiday, so I'm not there.
Well, it's even better. All right. Well, my focus is on the presentation, and I have quite a series of issues. The first issue is this definition of sex tourism. I don't know if that is a standard worldwide accepted definition, but I find some of the explanation of the definition a little bit troublesome. For instance, let's say I'm a businessman and I go to India for business, and then I decide that as a businessman, I would like to enter into some kind of other industry. Does that make me a tourism for that particular industry? I go to Jerusalem as a JP for worship, and then I suddenly decide to enjoy myself sexually, which is of course immoral. Does that make me a sex tourist? So the issue is, does having casual sex while traveling outside constitute sex tourism, even though that sexuality was not really your focus? Okay, I mean, you have a desire and you fulfill that desire. Does that still make you a sex tourist, regardless of the fact that whatever it is, you only spend about 10, 15 minutes doing it, but you spend about probably 4 days on the real cause of why you are there? That's my problem. The second issue I have with the paper is it focuses on heterosexual sex tourism. What about LGBT sex tourism? What about men who go outside looking for men? Nobody is covering that. And we need to know how bad that is, because that's how HIV transmits far much more effectively. So there is a need for an insight, at least on LGBT tourism. sex tourism. What about internet, the role of internet? I mean, you have in Thailand, Vietnam, and all those places, children that have been exploited, sexually exploited by German, American, European tourists who go to those places exclusively to have sex with those children over there. That now introduces a new element in the idea of sex tourism, the role of internet, the way internet facilitates sex tourism. I didn't see anything on that. And then what about reverse flow? I mean, we see women, because that's the picture he has. I never see men going out for sex tourism. We see women going to Europe for sex tourism. Do we have people, men from Europe, coming to Nigeria for sex tourism? I mean, it's cheaper for somebody from England to come to Nigeria. There are women all over the place. You can just pick up the one you want. So is there any reverse flow to the third world for sex tourism? How many people come to Africa for sex tourism? I mean, there is data on Thailand, on Pakistan, on Azerbaijan, and all those places for sex tourism. What about data for Nigeria and Africa? And then we're talking about voodoo magic, voodoo, juju magic, African voodoo magic. What about moral decadence? You mentioned it toward the end about social and cultural values. But I'm a scientist, and I really don't believe that somebody can put a voodoo magic on you and then make you act like a zombie or something like that. Not in 2023. I mean, we are logical, rational, scientifically focused, and so on. So that variable needs to be looked at. But perhaps the most important thing that I find about the paper is lack of an empirical data. Those who have been participating on this forum know that for years I've been advocating for empiricism in whatever we do. Most of the information given is available elsewhere, and he acknowledges, which is fine. I would have loved if he could just profile 10 women from NAPTIP or from anywhere else, 10 women, and have a deep discussion with them and see the whole issue of sex tourism through their eyes. That will give us a deeper ethnographic immersion to the problem. But at the moment now, all we see is figures. Is this moving from there, put this place to that place? Sex tourism is bad. Diseases are coming on. Why? Let's have it from the practitioners themselves, those who have returned. As a professor in tourism department, it would be very easy for him to locate women who have returned and who are willing to talk. That way, we'll be able to know, yes, this is a problem, this is the magnitude of the problem. One woman giving us her experiences is enough to give us an idea of the magnitude of the problem, because it's virtually all the same. So my worry is lack of empiricism in the presentation that will enable us to really grasp the true nature of the problem. And then finally, what is the political economy of tourism? And again, that political economy will deal with how much money do these women make? Oh man, were there men sex tourists? If there are, let's know who they are. How much money do they make? And what is the worthwhileness of what they do? When they get all this money, euro, pound, or whatever it is, do they help their families with it? And do the families now justify sending them out? We really needed an ethnographic perspective of this issue. Beyond theoretical postulations, we need something that tells us this is a real life problem, and this is how people are coping with it, and this is how dangerous it is to our society and our cultural values. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdallah, for that comment and contribution. Well appreciated. And quickly, before calling the next, let me quickly greet or recognize the press, some of our people that have not seen from all the way from Italy. You are welcome and thanks for joining. And so many others asked to make his comments, followed by Professor Aneto and then Dr. Mad in that order. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director. I think some of the points, the paper by Nathaniel has opened quite a lot of, has a lot of opening, you know, just like Professor Abdallah mentioned. I think it will make more impact if he narrows his scope, you know, to a particular point in time. If he's saying maybe he's looking at a scenario in Nigeria, he'll be able to, now he has the NAPTIP figure. And then, like he rightly pointed out, if he's able to also focus on the fact that you're dealing with a particular region, then he'll be able to have more empirical data to say, yes, can boost his case. And then I know that the issue of LGBT is not his focus here. And then he mentioned causes of sex trafficking. I think when he mentioned economic condition, and then going far as mentioning poverty, inequality, and unemployment, I think that they can all also be subsumed under bad economic condition, you know, so that will help boost the discussion under that heading. And then recommendations where he mentioned revival of solid cultural and social values. Recall that the issue of culture is a major problem, you know. There are some cultures, like you actually postulated, that encourages this sex tourism, you know, particularly from, I think, somewhere in Benue, where they say visitors are always greeted with their friends' wives or all of that. So if that's the case, you now have to find out if that is their own culture. Does that negate your argument here? You know, so you need to also look at that. And then you talk about poverty and feminization of poverty and all of that. I do not think that recommendation on feminization should really actually come up there, because if you're recommending the issue of poverty, does poverty to a large extent drive people into this sex tourism? You know, going back to Edo or Benin, it used to be a flair for women to go overseas, you know, in those days. Some families will even encourage their girl child, you need to travel out. I have seen 2 cases where a girl was actually asked to join a particular group, and the girl was just a minor. And before you know it, she was in Germany. Today, she's married. She's sent back home. So is there a political economy of this movement of some of these people? So I think narrowing down to the Nigerian scenario can give this paper a more strong argument. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was told that I was not heard when I was speaking. I don't know whether anybody is hearing me now. Am I okay? The network is very bad.
It comes and goes. It comes and goes. So welcome sometimes.
My people, I was just welcoming you all online. I said Professor Kagbare, Professor BAJ. I said Dr. Awamadi, that I have not seen her for a long time, and I'm excited seeing her here. And of course, I said Dr. Areji. I said all the way from Italy. I've not seen him for a long time on this platform, and you are all very much welcome. And I said, indeed, every other person that is on this platform, Dr. Owolabi, or Omaye, and so on and so forth. I said, I am very excited seeing all of you showing your faces on this platform. So, and I said, over to the presenter. So I hope I am now heard. That was what I said, actually. I'm sorry if I was not heard. Okay. So the next person is Professor Aneto, then Professor Dr. Madri, and then I can see Dr. Okoronko already stand up. So let's go in that order. Professor Aneto, over to you, sir.
Yes, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish to thank the presenter. For me, it's a very comprehensive coverage of an issue from the lay perspective. I consider some of the comments by Professor Obama as fine-tuning of a presentation. I don't see them as solid defects in that paper. If anything, it's like when you are editing, you call for improvement by way of contribution. For me, from its own perspective, the paper may be split into 2, and then maybe part 2 could address on. But for me, I think the young man did a very comprehensive presentation, and it should be commended. Even the question I will want to ask him, I wrote it down before he covered it, is the aspect of whether sex tourism it could be intentional or circumstantial. I know it's largely debatable given what he has said now. The only area, and he has added to my knowledge, where I used to know of legalization of source tourism when I was there was in the Netherlands. And now, then I think a bit of Thailand, then he has now added other that I didn't really quite know of before, but for Netherlands and Thailand, yes. So my question is, where maybe I could modify it now, that we could look at the evolution, even though it has now transited into, if you like, a quote, profession in some areas. But looking at the evolution of sex tourism, would you say that it was intentional or circumstantial? And even though it is considered legalized in some areas now, I think he correct, because he said that when you ask for statistics or you confront people with a question, they are indirectly evasive. So I want on his comment on the main focus. I'm actually quite impressed with the paper as a lay person, and whatever Professor Adamu has said for me is calling for fine-tuning of the paper. I don't think that there is a drastic deviation. I think the young man was very comprehensive and solid in his coverage. So let him share his thoughts on the evolution. Did it emerge as something that, oh yes, or it is circumstantial? And I tend to think that it may have evolved circumstantially, and over the years became sustained given the existing socioeconomic and other factors or circumstances in which we have found ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Just to correct you, the name is Professor Abdallah Uba Adamu. You said Ahmed.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's Professor Abdallah Uba Adamu, not Ahmed. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, that is noted. So over to you, Dr. Awa Madi, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
I'm afraid I'm going to go back to the first three commentators. In spite of Dr. Aneta's, I mean, that's what the screen was saying, Dr. Aneta's comment. I think the paper, if it's a paper, I was wondering when I was listening, is it a paper or is it a book? In the sense that the subjects taken up are so vast, it would seem to me that must be a book. But then I had missed the first 5 minutes of the presentation, so I was blaming myself, maybe not having heard where the author was coming from. So I think this paper needs a really serious redirection. I mean, you have to make the choice. Is this going to be a theoretical paper, which is the impression I got from the title of the paper? Or is it going to be a combined theoretical paper along with some empirical evidence, whether it's from Nigeria or somewhere else? As it looks, the title gives the indication of being an empirical paper. And it is possible to do that. But in that case, what becomes important, therefore, is to get a clear definition of your concepts, including, and that's why I brought Dr. Aneto the first comment. We are not clear. Is it sexual exploitation? Is it sexual trafficking? What is it exactly? A clarity means having a section that deals with the different concepts that you are dealing with. to be able for the reader to say, okay, this is what is new being brought there, here. So I think it's a very good idea to write a theoretical paper, but you need to spend a lot of time dealing with the concepts that gives you a holistic theoretical framework. And from the presentation, I don't get that, which is why concepts are thrown in like that, and they really don't mean much. Among those, for instance, I would add slavery. Just because other people use the idea of slavery or modern slavery doesn't mean you have to use it. I think it's an abuse of the concept that totally disconnects the fact that slavery has structures that were acceptable. Today, anybody abducting people and using them knows. That is why it's a secret. That's why it's the second unseen economy, because the victim knows and the perpetrator knows that it's an offense. That is different from slavery. You can talk about slave-like, for instance. And that's what I mean by dealing with your concepts and sorting them out first. Slave-like, yes, because they are confined and all that. But they are not slaves, because there's nowhere in the structure of the world where that is permissible any longer. But when we talk of slavery, it was a historical situation in which it was permitted, wherever society we're talking about. That also leads me to the concepts of gender that you're using there. Actually, that's the one that was pinching me most. The use of terminologies that are related to gender oppression, gender exploitation, and kind of is being used rather lightly, loosely. And since the majority of victims I happen to have just finished supervising a student who was writing on sex tourism in the Gambia. So kind of, I have fresh in my mind, what are the issues that deals with the African continent, for instance. So the definitions of the concepts in that particular type of trafficking for sex, where it is, although I accept the comments that are being made by Professor Adamu and others, it is predominantly females who are in that trafficking. But still the author needs to therefore at the beginning exclude that there are, same-sex tourism also and all that, but that is not what you're going to address. I mean, just clarity is important. That is when you want to write the theoretical paper and you can use your data from these overview, global, international kind of statistics. You can use that, including Nigeria's overview, which you have used. You can do that. But then you can use the other type of, you can redefine in other ways in which you can, and that may be more easier in a way to use by kind of having interviews with the victims of trafficking. In Nigeria, it is easier for you to do that, I'm saying, and you can still apply some of the theoretical concepts to arrive at a new way of looking. And this is where the culture in Nigeria matters. What is the gender structure in Nigeria? What kind of oppression exists in Nigeria? Why is it the majority of those who are in the sex trafficking females rather than males? While there are male migrants as well, they are not sex trafficked. They are emigrating for other reasons. Why is it that it's females? That requires you to look at the gender structures in Nigeria. What is it that makes it possible or acceptable for families, for individuals to take themselves through that system? Because I agree like this. This is what I say. I teach migration a little bit, but not a lot. And there's this situation where people sit back and say, oh, I'm sorry for these women. I'm sorry. I'm not saying I'm not sorry for them, but I'm saying these are also, apart from children, intelligent young women who are making choices. You cannot take away the agency of people from them. They are intelligent, sharp women taking decisions. Now, like we all think, I'm so sharp, I'm intelligent, nobody is going to abuse me. That's what we think. We all do that. Unfortunately, when you think like that, you are also more likely to end up in that chain of events that can, go wrong. So I'm saying, I want to give those Nigerian women and all those other women that end up in the trafficking system, I'm excluding children, but adult women who know exactly why, the motivation for their decision to exit where they are, and the motivation to choice of where they want to go. I say things go wrong, but that wasn't the intention or the plan. But I do not want to take away the capacity of these women to make up their minds. So I need to understand, therefore, what is the structure in the gender relationships in Nigeria? that forces women to make those choices, those difficult choices, knowing sometimes even the dangers in this choice they are making. I would focus on that. And there you'll definitely contribute new information, new evidence into the whole overall system of understanding trafficking and sex tourism and the rest of them. But most importantly, I say you need to redefine your concepts, especially in relation to gendered situations in which those who are trafficked find themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful comment, and I'm sure the presenter is taking notes. Finally, Dr. Areji Okonkwo, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presenter, and everybody in the house.
Am I audible, please? Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you are now
Okay.
audible. Thank you.
So I'm just thinking whether sex tourism is synonymous with irregular migration. I was following your rendition, and it appears that sex tourism is almost equiparated with irregular migration. Can there be a sex tourist who migrated regularly? That is one. Number two, it seems to have been that the concept of tourism seems to be anything happening outside Nigeria, though you said prostitution is not permitted in Nigeria, but it's an existential problem that there's also sex tourism within the country that is gradually being official, that some highly placed persons going for an event, a lot of women are arranged for them for such events. I'm also thinking whether it is not a type of sex tourism. In any case, I'm edified by your paper, and but I think the bottom line of it
the
is
internet
that,
is breaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the bottom line is what Niccolo Machiavelli says, that the end justifies the means. So sex tourism happens to be one of those ends which people now use to justify that I'm now rich, so I can also use it. Where there is no moral rectitude, every other thing is permitted. So I think looking inward into Nigerian system also may help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Areji, for that time to respond to all the comments so that we know whether there are more comments. Dr. Nathaniel, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, professors and other erudite scholars. I will start from what my director said the other time about witchcraft tourism. Witchcraft tourism is a new aspect of tourism, and it involves going to areas that have been known, in quotes, known for witchcraftry in olden days. So those areas are, set aside so that people can come and see them. And very important is most of the time they don't even allow them to stay there at night because of whatever that might happen to them. And that is that on witchcraft tourism. And she mentioned the issue of trousers, although she said it's on a lighter mode. I was just citing an example that when I was still small then, in my village, the general notion is that this person is a prostitute. Just citing an example of how our cultures have been eroded by globalization. Now, back to my Oga at the top, Professor Adala Oba Adamu. Now, the question, apart from other comments, which I've noted, is having sex during traveling, does having sex during traveling makes you a sex tourist? I mentioned it the other time. it is still possible for you to be a sex tourist, even when what you are going out there to do is something else. You might decide to go on religious tourism, which involves pilgrimage. But if at the end of the day, you see yourself, engaging in any form of sexual activity, it might not really mean, looking for a prostitute. It can be sex shows, etc., etc. It means you are a sex tourist, although that is not the main reason why you are there. On other comments, I've noted that, and I will try and work on that in the main paper. I think Dr. Emina, my very good friend, he only made a comment which I've noted as well. I'll work on it. Professor Aneto, the question is sex tourism intentional or circumstantial? It can be intentional, at the same time, it can be circumstantial. I mentioned it during the course of my presentation. I provided a diagram on sex tourism spectrum, where I noted that it is possible to engage in sex tourism voluntarily, especially for those that are at the demand side. That doesn't mean that those that are supplying to cannot do it voluntarily. They can still do it voluntarily. But most of the time, just like I mentioned when I was presenting, sex tourism is a term that is legal, but there are many illegalities. There are many illegalities that is attached to tourism. And that is where sex trafficking comes in. Other comments on that have been noted, and I will work on it. Yes, Professor Awa, she didn't actually ask a question. I think she only provides some comments that we further enrich the paper, and I've noted that as well, and I will surely work on it, especially making the paper an empirical one, probably combining theoretical and empirical data. Yes, and lastly, Dr. Okonkwo, the only question you asked is sex tourism synonymous to irregular migration? No. Sex tourism is not synonymous to irregular migration. Just as you have rightly said, when I was defining those types of tourism and I brought in the theory of demand and supply, one is at the demand side, and that is sex trafficking. Those that are supplying, they are the ones that are, looking for sex victims of sex traffickers, to be able to boost their work. Now, sex tourism is not synonymous to irregular migration. Sex tourism is an end. It's an end. Irregular migration is like a process which may likely end into sex tourism. Other points I've noted as well, and I will surely introduce it in the work. Thank you very much for your comments.
Our presenter, thank you so far, so good. I can see more hands up, but I want to say you forgot to answer me when I said sex tourism versus sex trafficking. Any difference?
Yes, there's a difference. I think I've answered that as well.
No.
Yes. So sex tourism is an end, just like I said the other time. When you are talking about sex tourism, you have a demand and supply. Where you are going to, whatever you want to go and do there depends on the product. Tourism in general depends on the products you will be meeting there. Let me quote one of our erudite scholars, Professor Wa Afolabi, is retired now, said it is possible to even have what we call class tourism. Class in the sense that you have your class, you put one or two things, that can bring in people from outside. And by the time they come there, it is known as class tourism. The types of tourism is as many as possible. So sex tourism is an end, and the sex trafficking parts It's just like something that that's a kind of activity that hides under sex tourism for its activity. I think I've answered that in my own way.
Okay. There are more questions, but I forgot to ask you this. You were talking of buy sex and sell sex. I really, not now, just note it because others are going to make comments and you take all together. Buy sex, sell sex. Please, can you expatiate on that or differentiate? Buy sex, sell sex. Hello, you are not getting me. I said, just note this down. You will answer it later.
Okay.
Buy sex, sell sex.
Okay, okay.
I don't know whether you can hear me now. Later, just put it down. Buy sex, sell sex.
Okay.
And then that's the one I wanted to answer later. And I will ask the people, starting from Professor Abdallah, then Professor Kagbari, and Dr. Madi, in that order. Maybe they just have one or two things to verify.
Mine is very quick. I just want to commend the speaker. For the last 3 years or so that we have been participating in this forum, this is the first time, if I recall correctly, that criticisms were made on a paper to a presenter and he accepted that he will improve. In other cases, we have stubborn people. Their papers are full of flaws. They know it. There are gaps in their presentation, but because they are professorial, they believe they cannot make a mistake, and they keep insisting that they were right, trying to defend the indefensible. So a young man or old man or whatever it is, I'd like to congratulate you. You are truly on the path to scholarship. This is accept your criticism. It's the first step towards being a great scholar, because we can improve. You know, we have made a lot of points about your paper and you have accepted. Yes, there are applause, and I will improve on it, and I will take into consideration all you have said and improve on it. That is wonderful. That is scholastic. That's how it should be. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir, for that comment. Professor Kagbari, sir, over to you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And thank the presenter for the exposition. I'm going to ask my question as a layman because I'm not an expert in tourism. I have very minimal knowledge apart from the fact that I enjoy.
Yeah, but are you an expert on sex tourism?
No, I enjoy visiting different parts of the world. Now, I just want to ask, you were talking about reviewing our legal framework. And I wanted to know if there is a particular area of it that you want to be reviewed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Madu, yes, over to you.
Thank you. I would like to repeat Professor Adamu's commendation to the presenter, to the paper presenter, I think it's wonderful that we acknowledge where we need to improve, and that's for everyone, you know. And so I just want to underline two things. One, the gender perspective is inadequate. You really need to go back and read gender to understand what part it is that you want to talk about. But the other thing I want to emphasize is that you have spoken about economic policy, global and local. And I think that area is too vast for you to include in a paper. Actually, I want to say maybe it would be a good idea to just take it out, because that will require a more in-depth understanding of why Nigeria is poor. I mean, citation mark, poor. Not just understanding corruption and the siphoning of public resources in Nigeria, but how the relationship between Nigeria and the institutions you mentioned, the World Bank and so on, and the West generally speaking, that is a subject by itself. And I would rather kind of delimit it, just say this is an important factor, but I'm not going there because it's too vast. Because it goes to the understanding the vast amounts of loans that Nigeria has taken over the years. Where has the money gone? Why are people poor? That means the redistribution of resources within Nigeria and the redistribution of resources on a global scale. I think it's too vast. I don't think you should take that writing this paper on sex tourism of different kinds or trafficking or anything like that. just mention and delimit it. Put reference to people who will go and read it, but don't enter into that. You need to be an economist with a very good grounded knowledge of how money is siphoned from the south to the north. You know, the whole, how do you say, and the development logic, you know, how that happens. And I don't think you want to go there. But it is important to understand, and you talk about gender inequality, and I need you to go deep into what does it mean, inequality between the genders in Nigeria. What is that? What does it look like? What are the differences? I know you mentioned the Yoruba region and all that. Okay, these issues exist, but these are, you're going into the kind of the shallow ways. It's not shallow, it's the form of how the exploitation of women in Nigeria in the form it looks like culturally. But that's just the form. I know I already 30 years ago, 40, I argued, I had a friend from Benin. She was saying, women in Benin are independent. I say, no, absolutely not. It's just done differently. How it happens in Benin and how it happens in my corner in northeastern Nigeria is different. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean? I'm separating the form and the content of the details of exactly how it happens. Women are exploited in all over Nigeria. It doesn't matter where. The form differs, and make sure you understand all these distinctions that are taking place.
Thank you very much. I can see a new hand up, but before that, let me call on Professor Tijani, because I think he has some comments to make. I can see that he apologized for coming late, and I want to say he's welcome, and he's always welcome, and I know he has us in mind. So let Professor Tijani quickly tell us, it's better to hear from him what he wants to say. Then I think I can see here Felicia Onibon, who will now speak after Professor Tijani. And with that, the researcher will just comment lastly, and then we can round it up. Thank you so much. So Professor Tijani, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Director. I will just read what I posted in the chat. I hope my voice is audible. The first one I posted is that what are the financial benefits to the actors/actresses? What are the financial benefits? If you pick a case study, I don't know whether you discuss a particular one, because it's such a wide study when you talk about sex tourism generally. Then the second one is just to tell you that you may want to check Ebele Udochi and Taiye Shaibu's work published in 2019. The title of the edited work is International Relations of Migrations, Issues and Challenges. And just last week, or 3 days ago, they told me they are, reviewing and they're coming out with another edition. I'm actually using that book in my fall course. I'm teaching a course titled Migration, Development and Politics in West Africa. Okay, this fall, starting in late August. So what I think when you talk about the issue of maybe in context as well as content, the issue of legal instruments, at least within Africa, or to be more specific, West Africa, you will find their work useful. And Udochi is one of our colleagues in the political science department at NOUN. Taye Shaibu is also a colleague at, I believe, at Dekunle Ajashin University. So those are my comments. Again, I thank you, and you should be looking forward to contributing gratis to those largely African American students that will be in my class in August. We're calling on some of us. Thank you, sir, for sharing knowledge. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak.
Is it my internet or his?
You can hear me?
Again.
Oh,
We were able to hear you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Tijani. So over to you, Felicia Onibo.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to appreciate you all for this wonderful program and for the presentation as well. I'm a gender scholar and I'm also an activist, in that sector. But I just wanted to say that an opportunity to get information and new knowledge, in this area is this. And we shouldn't shy away from looking at the situation as it affects men, young boys, and women. Yes, migration is taking place, sex migration, where people move, women are taken, young girls are taken to other parts of the world, for I think sexual trafficking or sex trafficking, and we shouldn't look at the girls alone. I think the boys things, it is necessary for us to look at what's happening also with the boys. It's a silent thing. It's happening. We are hearing of new things happening in this country. We know that boys are being violated. And we also know that some of the violated boys grow to become men who violate others. So what happens? What happens to them? Are they being moved from one state to the other? Are they being moved out of Nigeria? Where are they being moved to? We already know that some of young men are also being violated abroad. Are they becoming sex? Are they becoming trafficked individuals? That find themselves in either strange locations or strange community. So I don't think much study has been done, with regards to the movements of young men, and what they do. So this study might not have looked at it, but I think this discussion brings out the fact that there is need for more attention to this area of study. We need it. A lot of Nigerian young men are looking at some other young, perhaps musicians or artists who now are, homosexuals and who are also becoming attractive to young people. What's going on? Is there anything going on that we should know? Is there anything the government or the nation as a whole need to know that we don't know right now? And I think a study like this can throw it up. So I'm just looking at it from the gender point of view. Let us not look at just the women. Let us not look at the young girls alone. Let us also check what's going on with our boys and with our young men. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. It was well appreciated, and I'm sure the presenter has also taken note. Oh, Emeritus Professor Sogol, well, that will be the last. And I will wish that it's brief so that the presenter can say something and then we'll run. Okay, sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much that you can still take me. I didn't want to really speak, but it's just one point I want to make. Since we are talking about improving on the presentation, I'm sure that the presenter will take this kindly. And it is the point of whether the sex tourism is done out of the person's free will, or it is an involuntary act. That is very important, because I always take it that when you talk about tourism, it is a voluntary act. You go on tour on your own volition, not that you are forced to go on tour. If you are forced to, then of course the element of trafficking, which we have discussed, is there. And I just try to suggest that you should always try to make this fine distinction each time he's talking about the concepts of tourism or trafficking and so forth. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for that input. Now we've heard everyone's comments and questions. So, presenter, can you just quickly respond to the second half of this exercise and make your last comments?
Thank you very much, my professors and evidence scholars. Let me start with my director's question. The issue of buying sex and selling sex. I think she got that from one of the maps. There are some countries that sell sex, they supply, but they don't demand for sex. There are some countries that does that. They are interested in probably bringing in people from different countries, you know, so as to engage in this sex tourism of a thing. But they themselves, they don't buy sex. They are not, probably by their culture, they are not actively involved. They use people from outside, you know, to get whatever they want to get from sex tourism. That is that. And from Professor Okagbari, on reviewing legal framework. What I was just trying to say there is most of the people involved in trafficking, most of the people involved in sex trafficking are not always brought to book. Probably because most of these people are politically connected. For example, here in Nigeria, there are many people that are above the law. They are above the law in the sense that whatever they do, they do it. Nobody will question them. So most of the people that are involved in this sex trafficking thing, most of them are not always brought to book. When you look at the data from NAPTIP and the likes, most of the things we see there are just rescued, not the arrests of people that are really involved in sex trafficking. So if there is a better legal framework, I believe that that area too will be taken care of. Professor Tijani, thanks so much for the contribution, sir. And I will work on it. And I will look at the paper from the BBWG and Taye Shaibu on international migration issues and challenges. And I think Dr. Felicia or Professor Felicia, I don't really know the talks. She talks about working on the other gender, not necessarily ladies now, not necessarily women, talking about bringing men into this. I mentioned that although this work really focuses on women because they are the ones that are most, that are the major victims in the sex trafficking business. Nevertheless, just like I said, in some countries too, we have female sex tourists. Female sex tourists means those that travel, you know, to meet their needs. This time around, females are the ones traveling voluntarily now. They are the ones traveling, okay, to see men, you know, that will be able to satisfy them sexually. I think that is all. Okay, Professor Sogolo, my very good Oga. What you said to, I will work on it. I will work on it. The distinction between tourism and trafficking, although I mentioned it the other time, for sex tourism is the end. The only problem here is that there are many activities under sex tourism that are not legal. There are many activities going on under sex tourism that are not legal. So on that, I really want to appreciate everybody that has contributed. I will work with my director and my other senior colleagues in the department on making this paper worthwhile. And I want to promise that we will see the best of the paper in journal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that wonderful response. I mean, those responses rather. We really appreciate your contribution. Like Professor Tijani will always say, the audacity to come and present is very much appreciated. Because I'm borrowing his normal response. He said you have the I thank you for your audacity for being here. And so you have really done well, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the comments of everyone who has said one or two things today to make this paper better, and we look into it critically and try to put all the inputs into it to make it a richer paper, like he said, for publication. Because I told you that this young man works at this center. So it's a good thing that he has come up to show example to others. And I guess they will go online to go and listen to him and know that it's doable. You just need the courage, the boldness to come out, and people will comment on your paper and your paper becomes better. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. I agree with you. We'll be here for about 1 hour, 45 minutes, which is not a small time at all. And I guess that it's all worth it. It's a worthwhile period, and that we have shared together. Thank you. We appreciate you all. And on this note, I want to say bye-bye to everyone, except there's any clarification, any more thing. If not, we want to call it a day. Thank you so much. And shall I say bye-bye? I can't see any hand up. So I say bye-bye and thank you.